The medical outpost orbiting the dim red dwarf was unusually quiet, as though the entire station itself was holding its breath. Inside the main chamber, a group of Theravan doctors surrounded their patient, the envoy who carried the voice of their people across the stars. His skin shimmered faintly under the dim lights, but every breath he drew was weaker than the last. The alien machines monitoring him buzzed and blinked, recording numbers that spoke only of decline. Their science was advanced, their methods centuries refined, yet none of it was enough to stop the slow collapse of his body. According to strict Theravan protocol, they would soon end treatment and record his passing, believing it an honorable acceptance of fate. But one figure in the corner refused to move with the same calm resignation. Dr. Elias Grant, the only human doctor on the station, watched the steady fall of the envoy's vitals, his jaw tightening. To him, this was not the natural end of life, not yet. On Earth, he had seen this pattern before, had fought against it, and had won. The council was ready to let go, but Elias felt the weight of a single, unshakable truth. If he did not act, this alien would not survive the night. Elias stood outside the chamber long after the Theravan doctors had declared their intention to end treatment, his mind racing as the silence of the corridor pressed against him. He could still hear the faint beeping of the envoy's weakening pulse, a sound that to him was not finality but a challenge. The aliens had dismissed his protests, calling human methods crude and reckless, and reminding him of the strict codes that governed all medical practice in the galaxy. But Elias had grown up in a world where medicine was born not from rigid rules, but from desperate fights against impossible odds, where doctors bent and sometimes broke conventions because lives were at stake. He returned to his small quarters, a room cluttered with human equipment the aliens barely understood, and pulled up old Earth medical archives stored in his personal database. While galactic medicine had long abandoned these approaches, Elias saw patterns. He recognized the envoy's symptoms mirrored rare cases from Earth's past. His eyes lingered on a dangerous, high-risk procedure involving both surgery and experimental compounds, methods that the Theravan considered primitive, even barbaric. To use them here would be a direct violation of interstellar medical law, punishable by exile or worse. Yet as Elias studied the readings, he knew with absolute certainty that it was the only chance the envoy had. His hands trembled as he prepared the necessary tools, not from fear of failure, but from the weight of the choice he was about to make. To obey the law meant standing by while a life faded before him. To disobey meant stepping into uncharted ground where every move could be his last as a doctor. In that moment, Elias understood that rules were chains and he was ready to break them. The alarms echoed across the medical outpost as Elias pushed through the chamber doors, his face set with determination that silenced even the loud protests of the Theravan doctors. They shouted warnings, accusing him of madness, but he ignored them, his eyes locked on the envoy's flickering vitals. With swift motions, he overrode the alien systems, switching them from automated control to manual settings, something no one on the station had ever dared to do. The alien staff recoiled as he opened a surgical kit, pulling out tools the Theravan considered outdated relics, and prepared a cocktail of drugs he had mixed from scraps in his quarters. Each move carried the weight of defiance, but to Elias, it was simply survival. The envoy's breath rattled, shallow and uneven, the sound of a life slipping away. Sweat lined Elias's brow as he cut into alien tissue, guided not by alien protocols, but by instinct sharpened through years of human practice. For a terrifying moment, the monitor flatlined, a shrill tone filling the air like a death knell. Gasps filled the room, and several Theravan turned away, believing the human had killed the envoy with his reckless hands. But Elias was not finished. With desperation burning in his veins, he pulled out a crude human device, 2 compact paddles wired to a power source, and pressed them against the envoy's chest. Sparks jumped, the body jerked violently, and then for a long, unbearable heartbeat, nothing happened. Elias refused to blink, his entire being focused on that single screen. Then, suddenly, the monitor lit up again, a weak but steady rhythm pulsing across it. The chamber fell into stunned silence as Elias exhaled, his hands trembling, knowing he had crossed a line that could never be undone. The chamber was filled with silence, broken only by the soft beeping of the monitor that now carried a steady rhythm, proof that life had returned where all had expected only death. The Theravin doctors stared in disbelief, their faces caught between awe and outrage, unable to comprehend how the envoy was breathing again after crossing the line that no healer in their history had dared cross. The lead physician demanded Elias's arrest, his voice sharp with anger, declaring that the human had violated sacred law and disgraced the honor of their traditions. But before the guards could move, the envoy's family arrived, their eyes wide with shock as they saw their loved one alive, his chest rising with slow but undeniable strength. They rushed forward, their voices breaking with gratitude, thanking the human who had risked everything when others had turned away. Whispers spread quickly through the corridors of the station, carried by every witness, telling of how a human doctor had defied rules that seemed unbreakable and achieved the impossible. Elias stood still, his hands heavy, knowing punishment was certain, but inside he felt no regret. To him, there was no shame in what he had done, only the simple truth that life was worth fighting for, no matter the cost. The council debated fiercely, torn between their anger at the broken laws and the undeniable miracle before them. Every passing hour deepened the conflict. Was Elias a criminal who deserved exile, or a savior who had shown them a path they had been too fearful to walk? As the envoy's breathing grew stronger, so too did the question echo across the outpost, a question no one had the courage to answer. What if the human way was not reckless, but necessary? Weeks passed, and the envoy who had once hovered on the edge of death now walked the halls of the outpost with strength returning to his voice and purpose burning in his eyes. His recovery became a story that spread far beyond the station, carried on whispers to every council chamber and meeting hall across the galaxy. The Tharvan healers, once proud of their strict traditions, now struggled to explain how a human had succeeded where their flawless systems had failed. Elias was summoned before the Galactic Council, his future uncertain, some demanding his exile for breaking the law while others argued that his actions had revealed a truth too important to ignore. When the envoy himself entered the chamber, silence fell. With steady words, he told how the human had stood against certainty of death, how he had chosen action over obedience, and how that choice had given life back to one who was already gone. The envoy declared that humans possessed something the galaxy did not yet understand, a refusal to surrender even when all logic demanded it. Some called it recklessness, others called it defiance, but to the envoy it was something greater, a will to fight for life itself. The council listened, uneasy yet shaken, realizing that humanity's strength was not in weapons or numbers, but in the stubborn belief that the impossible could still be challenged. When Elias left the chamber, no one knew what future awaited him, but every species present carried the same thought: humanity could not be measured by rules alone. They were dangerous, not because they destroyed, but because they refused to give up, and that truth would echo in every corner of the galaxy.